Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. Shall we see? Yeah, wait. Let's see what's going on our wonderful island, lovely island of Fawnhollow today. I don't know. It's as soon as I started saying it, as soon as I said something different, I was like, what do I say? I can't even think. It's like automatic now. I paused for a little bit there because I wasn't actually sure if OBS started recording or not. But there we go. What are we going to talk about? I don't know what we're going to talk about today, but I have to say this to because it's on my mind. But I've been bringing up the Genshin Impact update for the past 3 days or something now. I've finally finished the Archon quest, and oh my god, it is pretty good. I would say. Good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 8:02 p.m. on Thursday, November 9th, 2023. I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'm not going to talk about it because it's still relatively new and that sort of thing, and most people don't really care, to be honest. It's just the long and short of it was it was really good. It ended up being one of those stories which I think I spoke about this before. I think I spoke about it after Mori. It was my favorite stories tend to be the ones which sit, I suppose, in my mind after I finished them. For stories you enjoy in the moment and you're like, this is awesome, this is a cool time or whatever, and then there's some stories which just maybe through a plot twist, or maybe through a really hard hitting moment, or maybe something which just feels so personal to you as well, which makes you just sort of think about them, I suppose, long afterwards. Sure, I have no idea what you wanted. Sure. Yeah, and it's just wild because for the first time I think while playing Genshin Impact, this was one of the stories. I mean, I spoke about it before. I very much enjoyed the Sumeru Archon quest and that sort of thing, and a lot of the previous ones are pretty good, but none of them were exceptional, I think. And to be honest, I didn't think this one in Fontaine was going to be exceptional when we started the first two parts. I thought it was going to be good. I enjoyed it, don't get me wrong, but then this last part was whoa, this last part was really good. And the problem is, it's a thing. It's an unforgivable sin to spoil, I suppose, a media property for someone, especially when it's so new and that sort of thing, to rob them of that chance of experiencing it. Because while I do say I don't mind spoilers, I feel if you can help not spoiling something, you should, right? But feels I guess the way I feel about spoilers now, I think about it a little bit more. Before I used to say that, I don't mind if you spoil something. It's just kind of I will still enjoy it either way. I think that's true. That part is not false. But I feel the amount... It's more about the comparison of how much I would have enjoyed something after being spoiled and before being spoiled. Because a lot of things, I think, actually end up enjoying more after being spoiled to a certain degree. And I think there was a study on it as well where... I'm not going to say that was irrefutably the case, because I feel that's a lot of these psychological based studies. I feel again, I'm not a scientist, so maybe don't take my word for this. But it's something they're difficult to reproduce. I feel I saw this in a Tom Scott video or something. There's a surprising amount of them which end up being sort of almost random chance to a certain degree. But yeah, what was I going to say? Yeah, it's certain stories, it depends on the story. And I think it very much depends on what the actual twist is. Because there have been a few stories where, had I been spoiled on it, I think I would have not enjoyed the story as much. I think this one definitely would have been one of them. I think Amori is another one which comes to mind. I'm trying to think of another story which off the top of my head, where if I think I knew about how things would end, I would have been I don't enjoy it as much. Because I think a large portion of it, after being spoiled on something, is your mind starts coming up with theories. You sort of enjoy it in a different way. You enjoy it from a much more, or for me personally, analytical perspective, rather than a spectacle perspective, where you're how could things turn out that way? What happens? What signs do I see? It's enjoyable in that sense, the same way that things are enjoyable on a second rewatch, I suppose, because you get to see all the signs which were pointing to it in the first place, and you get to see things recontextualized. I'm also surprised you're still Cornemer. I don't know how long you stay Cornemer for, but I'm just kind of surprised that you still are Cornemer. Yeah, you get to sort of see things in a whole new light. But for the first time, and you don't have to do a rewatch or second. So there's a threshold where a story needs to cross over in, I don't know, not necessarily plot twistness and effectiveness of story for my own personal sensibilities, where it goes from it's pretty good to whoa, this is like amazing sort of thing, you know. I don't know how to properly sort of conceptualize what I'm trying to communicate here, you know. It's a bit hard concept, I think, for me to properly get across. But the long and short of it is basically like my perspective, I suppose, now on being spoiled on things is different. Like I'm trying to think, like what is a story where being spoiled did not really rob me, I suppose, of the enjoyment of it. Now it's really hard to think of like media properties off the top of my head. I guess Star Wars is one of them. Okay, Star Wars is a weird one because I wasn't like super into it or anything. I don't hate it. I thought it was fine, but it was like a sort of thing where it didn't like enrapture me, like as enraptured so many other people. It's a sort of thing where I knew the big plot twist, I suppose, about Star Wars. I won't say it just in case you genuinely don't know. I don't know the like. I knew the big plot twist, I suppose, beforehand, but I think I would have enjoyed it about the same, having known the plot twist or not known the plot twist. Maybe that's not a really good example because it's probably one of the most famous plot twists, I suppose, in history. It's weird to say modern history because it's not even modern history because I'm pretty sure Star Wars came out before I was born, right? Didn't it come out like... I feel like it came out in like 1988 or something. I don't know if I'm just making it up. Star Wars 4. 1977 is in fact even older. Yeah. I'm trying to think of I think Squid Game is one. Squid Game, I knew like bits and pieces of it, but I think me knowing spoilers about it actually made me enjoy it more than not being enjoyed it. I guess what I'm trying to say is like there's some shows which have a plot twist, but the efficacy of a plot twist is very sort of dependent. Some of them are plot twists which actually sort of like punch you in the gut, and some of them are like a slap across the face, you know. And the ones which are punches in the guts are ones I don't want to know about before. Well, I mean, this is like a really weird analogy. The ones which hit you the hardest, I suppose, are ones I don't want to know about beforehand. But the other ones are still, despite knowing they're going to happen, are still a spectacle to watch in the first place, I suppose, because of a process which leads up to, like a plot twist or a big. I shouldn't say plot twist because plot twist is a wrong word. More like big climactic moment, the reveal, I suppose. So I guess what I'm trying to say is some stories' big reveal has more weight put into it plot-wise than others do, which I guess is not really all that enlightening a phrase. The more I think about it, I don't know what I'm basically what am I trying to say? I'm just like shocked at how much I ended up enjoying the story, if anything. Of this Genshin Impact story, and it's just weird because, you know, Genshin Impact it's a game I enjoy, and the stories, most of the stories that you kind of play are sort of like event-based stories, which is just sort of like harmless fun, if anything. There's been a few times over stories I've like the actual Archon quest, I think, which is basically the main plot line, I think, of Genshin Impact, is actually pretty good. I don't think it's like killer amazing or anything. It's not like an all-time classic. It's not going to go down in the annals of history as being the best like fictional work of all time, but it's still like an enjoyable enough time, you know. Like I feel like most people could play it and get fun about it. Not everyone, I would say. Sometimes it does drone on, and certainly the latter half of it is much stronger than the first half of it, in my opinion. But a lot of Genshin Impact tends to be a lot more like, not slice of life, but more like fantasy, adventure-y sort of stories where, you know, the stakes aren't crazy, and the stakes which are there are always like sort of, you know, soft punches from like a fantasy book or that sort of thing, you know, like I'm trying to think of like a good example, like maybe like the first Golden Island Archipelago? I don't remember what the plot was for that one. It's just like we've sort of gone there to have a good time. You learn some lore about those things. You get some funny character interactions, and you get some character development as well. Soft punches, but then sometimes you get like some bigger punches from the game itself, which sort of surprise you, like how good it is. I guess it's sort of a thing of expectations, you know, being like, I don't expect much from this game in the first place because that's not really what I'm signed up for. But when they actually sort of like knock it out of the park, it's pretty incredible. It's like, I mean, I'm drawing comparisons off things I know, but it's like watching, you know, a show which is mainly directed for kids, and then it has like a killer soundtrack for some reason. You just sort of go like, wow, why does this go so hard? It's that sort of unexpectedness from, oh, you are ill, let's go get you some medicine. It's that unexpectedness which I think really adds to things. And it just sort of surprised me because I think this is the first time through playing Genshin Impact where I'm just like, the story is still on my mind. maybe the second time actually. I think the first part of Sumeru Act 1 actually really was like, made me go, whoa, this is like really cool. It's just like I'm not sure strange experience is the right word, because that makes it sound a lot more dismissive than I meant, but just sort of like plots which stay in your mind. And I'm very thankful I didn't spoil myself for it, because it meant I could just sort of enjoy the moment. I feel like that is certainly a problem with me, is that I'm not really the type of person to read or consume a story and just be like a spectator, be an audience member, just be there in the moment, enjoy it. It's something I definitely had to learn, I feel like, throughout the years. I feel like, especially when I was younger, it was always me sort of like trying to analyse it. Again, I'm not a writer, so my analysis is probably pretty poor, if anything, especially when I was younger. I can't imagine how bad, like, first-year-old me will think of it. Because I don't really ingest that much media and that sort of thing. It's not like I read really all that much. But it's the sort of thing where, like, when I was younger especially, I feel like I always came at stories with a very critical mind, being like, is this tropey? I always trying to literally predict exactly what happens, like what are the signs, this, come up with theories, which I'm not saying is inherently a bad thing, but I think it was inherently wrong for me to actually properly enjoy the story, because I think back to it, I'm like, did I enjoy the stories that way? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I feel like a lot of it was just tied up with me wanting to be like, yeah, gotcha, game, gotcha story, you can't pull a fast one on me, I figured out what your plot twist was, I figured out what was happening, you know. I guess it's more, I wanted it like to be a puzzle to be solved, but I feel like there's inherent joy, I suppose, with engaging in stories in a way of just being a spectator, letting it take you along for a ride, rather than necessarily trying to fight against it. And, you know, knowing yourself is an important part to knowing which one you should actively engage in. There are some stories, you know, I think you would be a fool, not a fool, but I think you would be in a minority, I suppose, if you read like a detective novel and did not actively try and engage with a story and try and guess and see the signs and figure out who the killer is, what the story is, etc., like that. I'm not going to say it's a bad choice necessarily, because that'd be hypocritical of me after me just being like, oh, you should try and do the thing which suits you best. But it's the sort of thing where it's like, £20,000, what the heck? It's sort of thing where, like, you don't have to do that, obviously, for every story. Some stories, I just sort of let them sweep you up in the story itself and just, like, have fun with it, you know? Let it catch you off guard, you know? Play the fool to a certain degree. And things can be a lot more enjoyable that way. I'm not going to say always more enjoyable. Again, I think this very much depends on your person. You might be a person who's like, no, I've got to try and attempt to figure out what the story is every single time, because that's just who I am. I want to figure out the plot. I feel like most people are probably somewhere in between, you know. I don't want to paint this as a black and white picture. There's like all the shades of grey in between. Far more than 50. But it's just, I don't know. But the problem is with these sort of stories is it's not always the easiest thing to know until after you engage with a story, if it was a story where it's like, yeah, you should have just left yourself get swept up in it, or if it's a story you should have actively engaged with, you know? I think about that sometimes. Not all the time, actually, because this is sort of like new thoughts formulating in my head. I'm trying to think of a story where, you know, I think I engaged with it the wrong way. I feel like, maybe to a certain extent, Life is Strange True Colours. I felt like a lot of it was me trying to figure out exactly what the optimal choice was, because I suppose that's the sort of nature of it being gamified, and me knowing the nature of these sort of games. It's like I want to make these right decisions, quote for the story I want to see, rather than letting myself sort of just get swept up in it, which led me to me sort of like overanalyzing the choices. I'm not going to say I regret the story that I ended up having, but I wonder if I would have enjoyed it more had I sort of let it sweep me up with it. Where am I going with this? Excuse me. I forgot what I genuinely just forgot what I was going to say, like where this was going. But yeah, it's a sad thing about stories is like you won't know the best way to engage with it until after you've engaged with it, which if anything is not inherently a bad thing. Like who are you trying to sort of min-max your enjoyment from stories? That just seems like a whole wild level of trying to min-max your life to an unreasonable degree. I would not even argue, I would state. It's just, I don't know. I don't want to do it for every story I engage with. I think that's unreasonable. But, you know, it'd be nice to know, maybe not beforehand, maybe nice to know beforehand, maybe nice to know unconsciously how best for me personally to engage with a story, for me to get the maximum sort of like enjoyment out of it, because it's nice having those moments of when a story sort of gets stuck in your head. And I feel like it's sad to rob a story of that moment just because you engaged with it in the wrong way, just because you approached it with a wrong attitude or something like that, you know. But that is, in the way of things, it's just kind of how life is, you know. You're not going to know the perfect answer or solution for these scenarios. You're going to have to, you know, just figure it out or give it your best guess. Those are really the only things you can, well, do. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with not wishing necessarily, but wondering what it would be like if it wasn't that way, you know? Because I do wonder how many of my stories I've engaged with, or media properties I've engaged with, which just could have been like one of my top 10 favourites of all time, but I just engaged with them at the wrong point in my life, at the wrong timing, with the wrong attitude, with the wrong idea or something, and it just sort of like, not ruined it for me, but it almost feels like, I suppose, it's robbing me of that potential happiness it could have had. But on the bright side is, I don't know what that potential happiness is it could have had. So really, I'm sort of just like making up a strawman situation in my head, which I don't really have any sort of like empirical proof that it's even true, right? I'm just sort of standing here being like, oh, doesn't this suck? And then you're being like, what sucks? And being like this thing I made up in my head, which is, you know, inherently quite silly. It's just, I don't know, it's an interesting thing to think about, I feel. Salad stuffed tomato. How do you fit an entire salad in a tomato? I gotta look at this. Salad stuffed tomato. You must have a huge tomato. Oh, it's like that, okay. For some reason I was picturing like cherry tomatoes, and I was picturing like a leafy salad, and I was like, how does this work in the slightest? Like a bread bowl sort of thing, but for salad and with a tomato. Which is obviously, ridiculous. Anyway, I don't really know what I'm going to title this episode. Like, story attitude? Engagement attitude? I don't know. It's just interesting to think about, isn't it? I genuinely don't know. But if anything, it makes those moments where things really do stick in your mind, those things which really appeal to you in a certain degree, even more special, because you're just like, yes, this is like, oh, this is it. This is what I wanted. Anyway, I'm going to round this episode off here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again. But for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.